Hi everybody, I'm Mike McCrory and this is Would You Make It? A few of you have asked me how I get such tightly fitting miters in the corners of my chessboards. And it's a slow process where I sneak up on the fit. I normally skip over that when I'm making my chessboard videos just to keep them a little bit shorter. So that's what I'll show now. So let's get started. As you've probably seen in my videos, I label the ends of each of the pieces so that I can have a continuous grain flow. But when I cut the miters, I'm going to cut those off. So what I do is I label the lower right-hand square with the letter A. I put a corresponding label on the first piece, and then I go counterclockwise around. So this will be B, C, and D. So to get the overall dimension, I put the frame pieces on and I measure the overall width. This is 23 and 15/16. So it's not a perfect 18-inch square. This is 17 and 15/16, and this is, looks like 17 and 31/32. So it's pretty square. So this is 23 and 15/16, and I'm going to cut the pieces a little bit oversized and then sneak up on the fit. So let's head to the table saw. I'm going to start by cutting each of the frame pieces just a little bit longer than 24 inches. Having a backer board attached to the front of the miter gauge like this is helpful for two reasons. First, it helps to prevent tear out, and secondly, it provides the exact location that I need to align my mark to get very precise cuts. Next, I want to bring the miters together. I'm not so worried about length right now, but I want to make sure that the angles are correct because I cannot be guaranteed that this board is exactly 90 degrees on every corner. And that's because of all the glue ups of the squares. So when I put this one actually looks perfect, or as close to perfect as I can get. There's no gaps at the outside or the inside. So we'll try the next one. Now on this corner, it's not bad, but it's just a tiny little opening of the inside portion. So I'm going to take this back to the table saw and just adjust the angle so that it's taking a little tiny bit off the back portion of this piece. I'm going to cut only this piece, not both of them. To trim off a little bit of the outside portion, that means I need to turn the angle this way a little bit. And I'm going to do it just a tiny bit. That's enough. Before making the cut, I want to test it against the blade with the saw turned off, just so I can evaluate whether or not I have this positioned correctly. And in this case, I'm going to back it off just a little bit. Okay, that's pretty close. That's about as good as I can get it. And that's pretty much it. I just repeat that process going all the way around, adjusting for length and fitting the angles. And then one thing is, if I overcut, then the only thing I have at that point is the ability to reduce the width of the board. I don't want to do that on this board unless I absolutely have to. So I'm not going to show that, but I just take the board back to the table saw and trim the width so that it fits to the length of the frame pieces. And you can see this piece right here needs to be trimmed just a little bit. So I'll take that back to the saw and get it to fit. I have the algebraic notation inlaid, and I've cut the mortises for the mortise and tenon joinery. The last thing I want to do before I glue it up is I want to clamp everything together and make sure that it truly fits. And if you try to just hold it by hand and fit the miters, it may fool you because the wood will move enough when you're holding it by hand that the joints will look like they're fitting perfectly, but they're really not. You really need to clamp them to be sure. You don't get any second chances, so you want to do that as a last step before gluing it up. The grooves in the frame pieces were fitting a little bit more tightly than I was expecting, and I think this is because the glue caused the wood and the plywood to swell up a little bit. So I had to resort to using a hammer to gently ease them into position. I like to use vertical clamping pressure on each of the corners, and I tighten them quite a bit. This helps to get everything aligned and helps to minimize the amount of sanding that's required afterwards. After unclamping, I sanded everything and cut some finger slots, and now it's ready for the finish. I start this with a coat of de-waxed shellac, and this gives a nice golden hue to the chessboard, and then I finish it up with a few coats of pre-catalyzed lacquer. So I gotta ask, would you make it?